You're now listening to Directing Magic with your host, Marquette Jones.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Directing Magic podcast. This is Marquette Jones, and I'm here today with another New Orleans filmmaker, which I'm really excited about, Samantha Aldana. Am I pronouncing your last name right?
Yes.
Great.
That's
so,
right.
Samantha, welcome. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to join.
You are a director, first and foremost, correct?
Yes.
And your last film was called
The Melancholy Man. It was a short.
Every day at 3:30, in a town that rested by the sea, at the end of the narrowest cobblestone street, there sat a man who looked troubled and bleak.
Yes, I saw that. So let's talk about that. How is it doing, or how did it do on the festival circuit?
It did really well. I learned a couple of years ago that short films, like extremely short films, tend to do better for me in the festival circuit. So when I did that, understood that, I started to just make like these micro short films. So Mon Kaliman is just 5 minutes, and it's just cute and, wraps up tight at the end. And people seem to like that kind of approach for a festival.
That short is really interesting because you have a lot of interesting elements to it. So do you feel like it's semi-animation as well as live action, or how are you able to do some of the interesting things that are going on in the short?
Yeah, it's funny. I never thought of it that way, but as the film began to screen more and more, people would call it an animation sometimes and start to ask me questions like that. And I was like, I didn't realize that it was perceived that way. I always saw it as theatrical. That was the idea going into it, is creating a live action film that felt cinematic, but that also resembled what it might feel like to be in a children's theater. So that was where the idea for the very two-dimensional set design came from, with building a backdrop as the exterior cafe. And our production designer for the film is actually a professional theater designer. It all just kind of fell into that vision of just, I wanted it to feel like paper almost, but still feel like a movie. And it's funny to hear that animation is kind of what is the biggest takeaway for people that enjoy the film. I love it. There are the illustrations as well. So I love that people think of it that way, even though it's different than how I set out to make it.
So basically, you got shot in a studio for the most part?
A studio is a nice way to put it. We shot in a friend of mine's art studio in the back, like a warehouse where there wasn't really anything, but it wasn't soundproofed, and it had electricity, which, but didn't have heat or air or anything like that. So we made it work. We made it our studio.
Awesome. Where did you come up with the idea for Melancholy Man?
I started writing it a couple of years ago whenever I was having writer's block with a feature film that I was developing at the time. And I went on this big writing retreat to Belize, where my family lives and where the feature film is set. And I was like, I'm just going to sit down and write this feature this month, and it's going to be fine. And didn't write one word of that movie. When instead, out of my aggravation, this little character kind of was born out of that, and he turned into Dan, who is the Melancholy Man. And I started writing these little stances for what became the poem. That's the voiceover in the film, and I thought it was interesting enough, and so I shared it with a friend and collaborator of mine who ended up co-writing the project with me, and we made it the following year.
And where did you shoot it, actually in Belize, or did you shoot that one in New Orleans?
So we shot The Melancholy Man in New Orleans.
Gotcha. And are you planning to go back to Belize to shoot?
Yeah, actually, that other feature film is actually written now.
Okay, good job.
And it just took a couple of years longer than I thought. Yeah, that film is actually set down there.
What is it about, and where are you in the process of making it?
It's called Little Lying Wild, and we are currently submitting it to screenplay competitions, looking for grants and labs, and, soon we'll be seeking financing. And it's about a little girl who misunderstands something that she sees in her village, and due to her overactive imagination kind of wheels this other story out of that experience, and it becomes a little bit like The Girl Who Cried Wolf as she tries to kind of navigate this, really brutal experience that she has. And it's like a dark fantasy.
Who are some of your inspirations as far as film directors?
Guillermo del Toro.
I knew you were going to say that. As soon as you said dark fantasy, young girl, I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah, he is a huge influence and inspiration. And I'm really inspired by like the work of Wes Anderson and like Michel Gondry.
Mm-hmm. What do you like about Michel Gondry's work?
It's the similar through line of all of those references. I was trying to think of somebody a little different from those as another example, but I'm really drawn to storytellers who create like whimsical, fantastical, or magical types of stories that, are based in reality, that can, shine this kind of supernatural or otherworldly light on something that is happening in our actual experience.
Is there do you have any inspiration from non-filmmakers? Like, are there artists that you see kind of influencing your work, or writers or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm also an illustrator, like second to my film work. And so I get a lot of inspiration from visual artists. I think like Frida Kahlo was a huge influence, Salvador Dali, especially their like surrealism and distorted realities that they create. Also, I love Dr. Seuss. I think that some of the crazy ways I see the world is probably directly from that. And just like really original, wacky stuff. Like that's what inspires me. And artists that create that kind of material is going to be what I gravitate towards.
And what is your creative process like? Like, I know you were saying earlier, when you got frustrated with one project, you decided to direct that frustration into writing something else. Are there other things that you do in order to get your creative juices flowing?
Yeah, I think that for me, as being an artist, I am frustrated like 80% of the time trying to produce this thing. Yeah. It never comes when you want it to. It feels like. So I always like to have a lot of irons in the fire, like things that I can put down and go to something else whenever it's not flowing. And I have my painting for that. I love to read. So that's like another way that I can kind of turn my brain off when I'm hitting a wall. Watching films, going to see art, going to see what other people I'm making, like my peers, getting inspired by them.
Have you seen Sorry to Bother You?
I haven't.
What? You should see it.
Okay.
Like
I'll make a note.
I don't know. I sound like your mom. Like, you better go do this thing. But I think there's a magical realism to that film that you would enjoy. So that's why I'm
I'll add it to the list.
And it is on like Amazon, I think now. So it's easy to get to. But anyway, sidebar. Okay, so what have you seen that you like right now?
The new Natalie Portman film, Vox Lux. It was really interesting. I haven't seen a movie that in a while that has looked that and felt that original. I recently saw The Kindergarten Teacher.
Yeah, I've been hearing about that. What did you? I haven't seen it yet.
I thought it was beautiful. It's not the kind of film that, like the others I described that I usually am, hooked to right away. But it was just so well done that you just can't, like, it doesn't matter what the genre is. Sometimes it doesn't matter if it's like in my wheelhouse. It's like respectable just for the control and authorship of it. And one of the best films in a long time that I've seen that had like such a clear tone to it. Like you just really knew that, the creator of that had a handle on every piece of it, and the performances were incredible as well. I love working with children, so I oftentimes look to films that have really excellent performances by children, and I like to learn about the process of what the director went through to kind of work with them and get that out organically. What do
you do when you're working with kids to get that out of them? Like, what's one of your secret mechanisms that you use for working with kids?
Well, I kind of feel a lot of times like I'm just like a really big kid, and so I really love like playing and like just really putting myself in a position for them to feel like I'm not like the director, or like the boss or the teacher. Like I want to be able to like get on their level, and when I'm working with a kid like in a scene, that's definitely like I'm down on the floor with them, and like I try and like really connect to them on that level and make them forget that they're on a film set, which is really challenging. But just like forget about the camera, forget about the 20 people looking at you. It's just like about what we're doing right here, and like kind of shrinking down the scope for them.
I love it. You have another short called C. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Such a cute movie. I was like, oh, can I bring her home with me?
Thank you. She's very, very cute.
I mean, you definitely have a strong aesthetic to most of your work. And I was curious because I feel like those films feel like they're made by the same person versus another one of yours that I've seen called, I want to say Where the Wild Things Are, but that's not the title. What is the title?
These Wild Things.
These Wild Things. How did you make the switch from like very controlled environments to something, that's outdoors and also a lot darker than these other pieces?
Yeah, so I actually didn't write These Wild Things. So that would probably be the first reason that it stands out as being a little different. The lead actress in that film, Jamie Newman, wrote These Wild Things. And I wanted to create something that was as absurd as we could get. But it's hard when you're shooting out exteriors and, none of my films have proper budgets yet. So, you don't really get that control when you don't have those resources. So it was definitely a challenge to try and like think about like each frame as like, okay, what can we do in each beat to like make an aesthetic and make it feel like a cohesive, strange little world. It was a definitely different process, but I'm also like on one hand attracted to, the whimsical, cute, childlike worlds like most of my other films are, but I'm equally interested in this darker approach of seeing experiences and from more like an adult perspective. It's kind of a weird combo, I realize, but my feature that I was telling you about earlier, like it's a very dark story. So, and it has just as much magic as anything else that I would make. So I think it is different, but I hope to like be able to explore both sides throughout my, projects.
Yeah, and you're definitely not limited to one thing. I was like, wow, look at that. That's way different from the other ones. How was it? How did you connect with the writer
of These Wild Things? So Jamie she's from New Orleans, and she was a part of this, I don't know if collective is the right word, but like find your little circle and you make work with them. And we definitely found that in New Orleans, and Jamie was a part of it. And we made a film years before that was kind of my first thing that I did in New Orleans. And with these people that are now like my main collaborators, we knew that we wanted to continue to work together. We have similar interests in the otherworldly. So she wrote that script and we figured we could do it for very little, and we pulled it off somehow. And it's made its festival run and is now public on the internet for anybody who wants to see. Actually, all of my films are. So.
And how do people find your work?
On my website, which is samanthaaldana.com or Vimeo.
Just Vimeo. Why did you choose Vimeo over YouTube for housing your work?
I don't watch films on YouTube. I watch films on Vimeo, so that's where I went to put my work. But I think YouTube's getting it kind of shifting around with what they're trying to do. They're even making original content. Right before this call, a friend of mine just shared the release date for a show that she's in. That's an original
on YouTube
show on YouTube. Yeah.
Wow.
So everybody's kind of making their own original content, which is exciting. More platforms for people who want to create stuff. Yeah,
I think that Vimeo, the picture quality is nicer for sure. If nothing else, that's a great reason to use them. But then I've heard people say YouTube is more searchable, so you move up the search engine ladder because YouTube is a part of Google.
Yeah, I don't know. I would love to watch good films anywhere that is
Yeah.
accessible. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm open to any platform.
So you said that you have more than one project that you work on at a time. What else is like in the works for you right now besides the feature?
Well, I have another feature film that I'm directing that will be before Little Lying Wild, and it's called Ivy.
Mm-hmm.
And we're shooting it in New Orleans, hopefully in the late spring of next year. And that's with an all New Orleans team. And I'm really excited about that project. In addition to that, I always have these ideas for micro shorts and music videos, but it's all just kind of like floating in the ethers. Those two are my main focuses right now.
All right. So you would shoot another short film?
Yeah, I love short film. I love the format. Despite the, sayings of you can't make money off of them or they don't go anywhere. I think for me, I will always have stories that are just supposed to be 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I hope to be able to make them.
How many have you made?
Out of film school,
Mm-hmm.
I've made, five or six. I can't I don't really think about things in numbers. I just... Yeah, I would say around that many. But I've been making films since I was like a little girl. Mm-hmm. So in all, I've probably made like over 50.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. I started when I was like 12.
That's really impressive.
If you count like a little videotape level, quite a few.
It's a good practice. It's great practice. And with the Ivy movie, what is that one about?
It's about a singer in New Orleans who begins to lose her voice and really has to face some of her own demons to discover why that is. And it's based on the writer's like true life story, and it's a big collaborative piece. And the company that it's with is Water Meter Productions, based here, and we're really excited about it. It'll be, my first feature film that I'll be directing, and I'm excited to do it like on the home turf.
Are these folks your same collaborators from your short films?
No, it's actually going to be our first time working together, but it's been great so far. That's my favorite part about filmmaking, the people and the getting to work with the other artists and building the worlds together. That's the best part. It's why I could never be like an illustrator full time, or you have the client when you do that, but it's just different having a whole team of creatives like working to do one thing. Mm-hmm. I'm lucky to have great people to work with.
How did you connect with them?
They reached out to me, actually. We have a lot of mutual friends, and we had met in the past, but it's a small community here. I would say most people know everybody. But it's growing, and that's exciting too. But yeah, they reached out to me and sent me the script, and it kind of went from there. And we will be in pre-production soon. We're doing rewrites right now and just kind of prepping everything.
And with the rewrites, are you involved with the writing process, or do you have a writer who's doing all of that?
Well, so the lead actress is also the primary writer of the film. We have been working together for the last, I would say, 2 months, just kind of having a really open, safe space talking about, like the different drafts that have existed and kind of like working towards like what is the specific, goal that we have with what we're trying to tell, which as a writer-director, it's really important for me to be involved in the writing process as a director, if that makes sense. It's like I know what it will take to like achieve some of the things in a way that maybe just like a writer wouldn't, due to like lack of just the experience of like, this much money can really only do this much, or it would be better if we could write it to be in this kind of location, or, and also like aside from logistically, just creatively being in a relationship with like a writer who allows you to also put your fingerprint on it. And I think with indie film, like it's so hard to achieve anyway. that's something that's really important to me, is of like, yeah, we can all do this together, but you know, it gets to be everybody's and still uphold the original vision and intention of the story. So that's really like my ideal way to work. I'm kind of drifting further and further from writing by myself, and working with co-writers, I've found is really satisfying to me, because it's, you know, I get to have the input, but have people that are just a little bit more experienced at writing actually like implement those things.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I'm a slow writer, like really slow.
Yeah.
And so like it would be great if someone could like just go do the stuff that fill in all of the gaps that I know are there, and we could call it co-writing, and then it'll actually get done a lot faster instead of waiting for me.
Exactly. I get so antsy. I feel like I can direct quicker than I can write.
Yeah.
And I just always want to be making things. So having these like teams is it's really great.
Yeah, I bet it is. I bet it is. So before we go, I wanted to talk to you about your experience with the NBC Diversity Directors Fellowship. How was that? How did you get involved? What can you tell those of us who want to pursue those kinds of opportunities?
Yeah, so I got involved with that opportunity through my mentor, who is a television director, and he works for the show that I got to shadow, which was The Magicians, which shoots in Vancouver. It's a sci-fi show, and I think it's on Netflix currently. So anybody interested in it, it's really fun. It's like, I think it's described as like Harry Potter for adults, and which fits up my alley too, of like fantasy and magic. But I got to go in and interview with Sci-Fi for the opportunity, and that went well, and I was granted the ability to go to Vancouver for a month and shadow on one of the episodes. And that was just one of the most like biggest learning experiences, seeing how different TV is from film, which is what my background is in exclusively until that experience. I got to shadow a really brilliant female director and learned just so much about like what it takes to work on such a tight schedule, how quick the turnaround is, and also made me realize that it's something that I'm interested in pursuing. So I hope to like that it leads to, you know, that opportunity leads to more doors being opened.
And once you found out you had the opportunity, so they're like, we want you to come to Vancouver however many days from now, what did you do to prepare for the trip, work-wise, not packing-wise?
I just didn't know what to expect. And so I talked to my mentor a lot about it, and just kind of like what will I need to do? What is my job? Like, I just didn't really know what shadowing even meant.
Sure.
And I just came to learn really quickly that it's called that because that's literally what you do, is you just are attached to the hip of this person, and you watch the choices that they make, you watch the questions that they get asked, and you know, you see how they succeed and how they handle things when it doesn't work out. And the goal is to just put you through the whole experience of prepping an episode, shooting it, and then doing the post side. So getting to ask the questions was really what I was excited about. So once I started to learn before I went, but I wasn't going to be like tested or like put on the spot for things. I got like less nervous about it and was really just excited. And I was still a little nervous, but it was just great to be with somebody who has so much more experience than I do, and just to have a safe space to ask, you know, those kinds of questions that I feel like everybody wonders, but the internet can only tell you so much. It's
Sure.
That on-set experience that is like invaluable. You if you have the opportunity to like learn that way, like that is the way. It's better than film school. It's better than books, you know.
What was one thing that you got to ask her while you were on set that you got a surprising answer for?
I think that the most surprising thing that I learned was the fact that she would go to one show after the next, and having it be so quick moving, having to like step into an entire new crew, a new genre, a new city, and like everything. It's a different show. It's a whole different ball game. And she would just do it. And for me as like a narrative filmmaker who I'll spend a year sometimes thinking about an idea, or I'll spend 6 months in pre-production for a short film, like it's that time to really figure out, how am I going to direct this? What is, what are all the elements going to be, and being so specific about it, and just, kind of like starting. I remember I had read the script before she had, because she was directing something else at the 3 weeks in advance when you get the script. And I was just like, what do you mean? Like, it's day one. I'm like, what do you mean you haven't?
Wow.
Like it was just really amazing. And she was just like, yeah, it's just the nature of this side of the business. It's like, you go, and like, that's what prep is for. Like, that's why you have a week or two before you guys shoot to do that breakdown and that research and make those creative decisions as the director. And I was just like amazed by that. Like, I just couldn't imagine. And although it is something that I want to pursue, and it is still kind of the thing about TV directing that I'm just like, wow, like, seems really intimidating, but I mean, people do it. I mean, there's so many great shows that all have like a authorship to them. So it's there, but it's just the format's a little different. And that was the thing that I was the most surprised to learn about the process.
And did you notice any limitations to like how you were saying what you like to work with the writer to kind of like put your spin on the story? Did you notice being able or not being able to kind of add that spin, even though it's a tighter time frame? But did you see her putting her spin or adding her secret sauce to the story while she was directing?
Totally. I think that was what made me know that it was something that I could do. Okay. Because I got to see, her implementing her own ideas and style to it, while keeping in all of these rules that the universe has of the show, and which is kind of like a creative challenge in its own. Like, it's different from you writing an idea, designing the vision and then executing it. But it's its own creative challenge where you're like, okay, how do I put me into this?
That helps me, because I've always wondered about that. I'm like, how does that part work?
Yeah. And I don't know if every show would be the same, but it seems like they really, really support the directors on that show. And I can't say that that's how every show would be. Like, would be that nice for a director to come in and get to add their own flair. But for in the way that I got to see it, it was really cool how it was accepted and supported.
Before we wrap up, can you tell everyone how to find you, how to support your work going forward, that kind of stuff?
I mentioned my website is SamanthaAldana.com. On there is a page that leads to all of my Instagram and various other social media platforms. And yeah, feel free to reach out or watch my films. They're all on there. I feel like I also have illustration stuff on there, but this is a different thing. But if anybody's interested in anything that I'm doing, feel free to reach out.
And if anybody wants to make a children's book and needs to hire an illustrator, maybe.
Yeah.
It might be too busy for you guys very, very soon, though.
Well, hit me up anyway.
Awesome. And lastly, what are you excited about that has nothing to do with film or television?
Well, it got really warm today, and the leaves are blowing and the sun is shining, and I'm planning on taking a walk as soon as we get off of this call.
Am I.
Yeah, so I'm really excited for that. I've been looking forward to it all day.
I feel you so much on that. Really, I do. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. This was really educational for me and interesting. And I keep inviting New Orleans filmmakers because I think onto the show, because I think there's something special going on there right now in that film community. And so I'm like, let me just find out. Let me tap into that a little bit. Yeah. So thank you so much. And it's been a joy. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night.
You too.
On your walk.
Thank you.
Bye.
You've been listening to Directing Magic with Marquette Jones. Be sure to visit directingmagic.com for past episodes and other information relating to the show. Also, be sure to subscribe and rate and comment on iTunes. Until next time, bye-bye.